Hi, I'm David Petersen, the creator of MouseGuard, and this is creator commentary for MouseGuard, specifically MouseGuard Issue 3, Rise of the Axe, which was later collected in the hardcover Fall 1152. For this issue and the remaining issues in Fall 1152, I'll be doing the commentary as audio only, but please feel free to follow along in your copy of the story in either issue form or from the hardcover as I talk about behind-the-scenes details, art notes, and my headspace as I go page by page and panel by panel. I was writing and drawing this issue in early 2006 for Archaea. It catches up with Saxon, Kenzie, and Liam after their exploits with the Snake and Grain Merchant in Issue 1, and Sadie's parallel time adventure on the beach of Caligaro with Conrad and the Crabs in Issue 2. The wraparound cover was going to be a watercolor, much like I did Issues 1 and 2. I started on a digital mock-up of the scanned inks to plan some color placement, and as I was doing all that work, I realized I'd been digitally coloring the interiors, and that was going well, and people were responding well to it, so I should just finish the digital mock-up and color the cover digitally. So this is the first cover that I colored digitally for MouseGuard. It depicts Saxon and Kenzie dueling in Barkstone. The building on the front, behind Saxon and Kenzie, is based on a famous storybook-style house called the Witch's House in Beverly Hills. There are other references on the back cover, but I'll get into those as they actually appear in the issue. Turning to the inside front cover. As with the previous issues, the text here is done Star Wars opening crawl style. It's info that you should have before you start reading the issue. The title, Rise of the Black Axe, references both Midnight's army being revealed, but is also a metaphor of the idea of an axe blade hanging over our heroes' heads, precariously balanced, waiting for it to come down and chop. The spot illustration is of Kenzie. I started the goal here of having a different character on the inside front cover of every issue. The little saying at the bottom kind of echoes some of the sentiments I was coming up with for the issue, but it's also attributed. And here I did some subtle world building. I didn't have some list of matriarchs or a history book already written. I was just throwing out things that I could return to and build off of it when the time comes. Why Laria is listed as a matron instead of a matriarch, I don't know. I don't even know why I made the switch here or if it was on purpose, but I meant matriarch. Diving into the issue with page 1. Panel 1 is a nature panel, used again to frame the title of the issue. Each time I tried to go with some kind of different species or feel. Here it's pine branches. Panel 2, we have our familiar mice on patrol in their traditional roles. Saxon forging ahead, Kenzie smartly holding on to something, and Liam reluctantly, timidly coming along behind. Their dialogue also backs up these archetypal personalities. But the balloon placement for that dialogue is really awkward. I meant it to read Liam, then Kenzie, then Saxon, and they're not arranged in a way that makes that easy to follow. Panel 3 is that thing that I do where I pull back for scale purposes. These are mice, and I want you as a reader to appreciate the scale of the world compared to them. It also helps to do this to avoid having a bunch of talking head panels. With panel 4, Liam's line here, Saxon knows not from subtle, still cracks me up, and it's the way I think of Saxon. In this panel, I'm playing around more with the action than I ever did in issue 1 or 2, and that can be seen in Liam's leap, Saxon's slow descent with his sword anchoring him and the weight on him as he's doing that, and Kenzie peering, kind of acting out the dialogue that he's saying. I used photo reference for the panels on this page from around a koi pond from some folks that my wife and I would house sit for. This panel also shows how much I like that repetitive form and detail, and this is one of the earliest panels where I really got into that repetition of form with the pine needles. Page 2, Midnight's first appearance where we can actually see him. Also the backgrounds in these panels, the nature, Less like the pine needles from the previous page, less about detail here, more about graphic 2D design shapes. All the leaves or grass and background foliage are all just open space or pattern. I debated how to draw and color Midnight. My earliest drawings of him, I would ink in the fur mostly black. But I worried as I was drawing this that it would be too hard to get him to appear in panels if I inked him solid black. Midnight's role here isn't explicitly explained, other than that he too is a guard mouse. I don't solidify it until some dialogue in, I think it's issue 5, but he's the weaponsmith of Lockhaven. And going on to panel 3, Liam is about to expose what they discovered in issue 1. Going on to page 3, this is another mirrored panel layout from the previous page. And panel 1 takes place a split second after the last panel on page 2. Kenzie's stepping up and blocking Liam both with his words and his staff. I still like the way the balloons dance a bit. Hopefully that shows that Kenzie is improvising his lines. Panel 2, Midnight puts in a subtle dig on his conspirator of the grain merchant from issue 1. He also kind of subtly refers to his duties as some kind of a smith. He also mentions Wind's Elm. This is more of that casual world building that I was talking about, adding in town names, stuff to come back to later. Now, Wind's Elm didn't make it onto the final map. I actually forgot to put it on the hardcover map. But my way of excusing that is that the map is dated 2 years before this story takes place. So it could be a new settlement, and in fact, I did remember to include it on the map that's dated 1154 that appears in Legends of the Guard Volume 3. And in panel 3, when their exchange is over, we get the characters kind of coming back to who we know them to be. Liam being young and polite, Kenzie saying nothing, being contemplative, and Saxon redrawing his sword. My main regret with this scene is that I think, in retrospect, it comes off as an enormous red flag that Midnight is the villain. That this is my way of introducing a villain. It's a new character, they're looking for a conspirator, a shadowy mouse, and here he happens to pop up in issue 3. On to page 4. I used photo reference for this hollowed out and exposed root trough and gate for the entrance of Barkstone. It was a locust tree just outside of the architectural antique store where I worked, and I was able to get lots of reference images from lots of different angles for it. In panel 1, we have Kenzie laying out the plan about not sharing any of their sensitive info with anyone, and the background is a technique where I cross-hatched the negative space, but left the tree spots open. All of those crosshatched lines then get a color hold put on them during the coloring process to push them further into the background. Panel 2, pulling back a little bit further, I got a better establishing shot of the tree. Also notice those knot holes. They will become important on the next page. And this is again one of those times where it's important to pull way back and show the scale of the world to the mice. In panel 3, the gates are locked, which really shouldn't be surprising on any mouse dwelling, really. It shouldn't just be specific to Barkstone. But I did want the reader to get the feeling that guard mice aren't welcome everywhere. Page 5, panel 1. A gatekeeper pops out of one of those knot holes from the previous page. Hopefully that physical location translates and you understand where he is in space. The design for his helmet and all of the Axe Army helmets started with a single slit across the visor like an orc armor from Lord of the Rings, but went through several changes with the help of the friends that I would hang out with on my art nights until this version was realized. In getting ready for this commentary, I wondered, shouldn't it be unusual for an armored mouse to be part of a town's security? But I guess it doesn't seem odd to Saxon, Kenzie, or Liam, so I guess not. Panel 2, I wanted to use photo reference for the door and hinges here, using one from the store that I worked at. But the door that I had my eye on sold before I got photos, so this design was one that I found searching other antique architectural sites. Panel 3, opening up into Barkstone. This issue, I wanted to try to show a mouse city, and that was so that the reader could get a glimpse for what's at stake when the guard fails or falls. To get ready for drawing all of Barkstone, I looked at lots of medieval cottages, and specifically a book about storybook homes. On page 6, our heroes go for a silent tour of Barkstone. For the next 2 pages, there are lots of architectural references and friend references. Panel 1, the June Alley Inn. It's based architecturally on the Tuck Box, a candy store in Carmel, California. The June Alley Inn later, of course, became the setting and tavern for the Legends of the Guard books. The name itself comes from an anagram of my wife's first and middle name, Julia Lynn. I was able to scramble the letters until I came up with Junalyin, which, pronounced phonetically, comes to June Alley Inn. In panel 2, we're inside the June Alley Inn. Kenzie and Liam down some tankards as Saxon eats, and we get to see June as the proprietor in the inn that we'll revisit in Legends of the Guard. Panel 3 is an homage to my mom. It's hard to read, but that mouse is outside of a genealogical archive. She loved to do genealogy, and she also had a block quilted jacket that looked a lot like that mouse's vest coat. Architecturally, the structure is based on Petersen's, no relation, Studio Court. For panels 4 through 6, friends of mine from the Hellboy forums on comic book resources and some of my earliest Mouse Guard supporters, Morna and Gary, were glassblowers. They had their own place called Starfish Glassworks in Victoria, British Columbia in Canada. And the sign logo here, instead of being a starfish, I did a fish with a star motif. This sign is also seen on the cover of the issue. After this issue was released, I had an email from a different glassblower about medieval glassblowing. Apparently, I had started a debate and research argument in that glassblowing studio over the accuracy of my drawings. The emailer said that after days of going back and forth, they thought that I got it right. What's funny about that to me is my only references were a few engravings of medieval glassblowers that I found on Google image search, and what I'd seen at historic Greenfield Village in Michigan. Page 7 is a mirror panel layout from the facing page. Panel 1, another Hellboy forum member and friend and early encourager of Mouse Guard, my friend Maya. Her username there on the forums was Ruta, short for rutabaga. Here, the produce vendor is selling peas, carrots, grain, and something in the turnip family. Not only is her booth shown on the cover, but you can also see a large rutabaga in the alley between her stand and the next building. Panel 3, the watching mouse, perhaps looking out for guard mice as part of the treasonous plot, is also the one seen sweeping under the balcony on page 5. Panel 4, the gray furred carpenter is an homage to my dad, a jack of many trades, but a craftsman at his core. The sign outside of his workspace is a reference to a wooden trade sign that I made for his shop door. Architecturally, this place is based on a Carmel by the Sea, California house, and while it was made more recently, it was made to emulate Hugh Comstock's buildings of the 20s. Panel 5. Even though Jeremy Bastian, from Cursed Pirate Girl, would eventually get his own guard mouse, this wood carver making a mermouse for a ship's prow is based on Jeremy. The key elements are the nose ring and the orange armband, referencing some leather bracelets that Jeremy used to make for his convention appearances. Ultimately, through all of these panels, I wanted Barkstone to feel like a place that was all about craftsmanship, hand or paw worked trades, and honest work. In panel 6, we get back to the main trio, and we find out what they've been doing in Barkstone. They've been asking around about any info about the merchant or any unrest, and now they're being followed. Page 8, panel 1. We get an overview of the city. It's our first pullback in a while. This was before I was using or building my own models. Designing this location on the fly was very new to me, and I'm pretty sure I found reference for the angle and building spacing from a castle or Lego town that someone had made and posted online for their D&D group. Kenzie's dialogue here shows that he already knew that they were being followed, showing his wisdom again. I think I was trying to reference here Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, knowing that Gollum was following the Fellowship. Saxon uses anger as his response, And when we get to panel 2, I regret the vague way I try to distance the army followers here. I like the sense of depth, but not my execution of shapes. It doesn't really make sense. Saxon is ready to find the solution to his problem at the tip of his sword, but Kenzie explains a concept that I wanted the reader to know, that the guard have no authority inside a city, only in the open country between towns. Page 9 is a 180-degree rotation from the previous page's panel layout. And Saxon comes up with his own idea, springboarding off of Kenzie's diversion comment. Saxon's idea, of course, is over the top. He knows not from subtle, as he uses a blade as his answer. The house in the background, again, is the same as the cover, a reference to the witch's house in California, a storybook-style house. Page 10, panel 1. Cameos! In the far left, in the vest with his hands on his hips, was my version of Mouse Han Solo. Counterpart to that, the blonde mouse in the white shirt, most of the way to the right, is a Luke Skywalker mouse. You can also see a cursed pirate girl mouse with the hat and the eye patch. And I think the one in the tricorn hat was a reference to Guy Davis's Marquis character, but I'm not really sure anymore. Ultimately, this crowd is excited to see Saxon's spectacle. Panel 2, Kenzie is not pleased. Here he's having to clean up Saxon's leaping before he looks idea. And as panel 3 goes on, the duel starts. Page 11 is a 90-degree rotation of the previous page's panel layout. In these action scenes, I opted to have the background fade away. That way I could focus on the characters and their movement. Page 12, it was important for me to show that Kenzie is proficient with his staff. He's not at a disadvantage for having a staff instead of a sword. In panel 3, Saxon confirms that this is still just a ruse, and that they hope that Liam is caught on. Panel 4, naked mice. This is a problem I have. I wanted the guard to be instantly recognizable as the guard because of their cloaks. And I worried that if other mice wore clothes, it would be confusing to the reader that perhaps every mouse is a guard, or there's no reason that one mouse should recognize a guard's cloak as being specific to a guard. But ultimately, I regret this decision. I'm not comfortable with the naked mice just because they're boring and nondescript, and I probably could have gotten away with it just by having them dress in something a little more peasant-y. Page 13. This is a 180-degree rotation from the previous page's panel layout. Liam sneaks away from the naked town mice, and in panel 2, we see him discarding his cloak. Another reason for naked Barkstone mice, so Liam could blend in without his cloak. Panel 3, another trade sign. I always liked the way Mike Mignola added all these signs to Lankhamar in the Fafford and Gray Mouser books. Fans who are now friends of mine did a wood-burned version of this design onto a wooden box and gave it to me as a gift at the first San Diego convention where I ever exhibited with Archaea. In panel 4, architecturally, Clark's cartography is based on another storybook-style home in Carmel, California. Page 14. Clark, with his monocles working away at his maps, was based on the cartographer Wally B. Feed in the classic adventure game Monkey Island 2. This is the first time I ever had to draw an accurate map of the territories, though I still wasn't using a master map file, so this isn't complete with all the cities and routes put on it. Also on the wall is a map that is based on Judge Woodman's city plan for Detroit. Page 15, a 180-degree rotation of the previous page's layout. Panel 1, Liam asks rather bluntly about the outlawed item in question, an interior map of Lockhaven. For panel 2, Clark goes to what looks very much like my flat files and mistakes Liam's request as an interest in the rebellion or uprising. The paper in the drawer says Black Axe on it. I think I was trying to Easter egg that word in and show a nefarious plot concerning the Black Axe. But Clark reveals that he does not have the map yet, and that he expects the delivery just to have been delayed. I guess Midnight hasn't let him know that the grain merchant didn't survive issue 1. Page 16, panel 1. Dust is falling from the rafters. This was my wordless way to show and not tell the activity of upstairs, that there's something afoot. Clark voices concern and news about the guard mice in town. And in panel 2, however, Clark is not worried. The missing map clearly won't stop this plan. Page 17, which is a mirror of the previous page's layout. Panel 1, Liam's getting a sneak peek here as he goes up the circular staircase. By the way, I used photo reference for that iron staircase. In panel 2, once he's in the attic, some of the forming Axe army is readying themselves. This confirms that something is wrong, and the treason mentioned in issue 1 and 2 is real. Page 18 is a series of pullback shots showing Liam in over his head in the attic, while his cloak and sword are being carted away as rubbish from his hiding spot. This is meant to be a no turning back point for Liam. It also means that over the course of Mouse Guard so far, Liam only ever had that triangle sword in issues 1 and 3. The iconic sword of Liam gets thrown away here. Of course, it will appear again when The Weasel War of 1149 is published. Page 19 is a 90-degree rotation of the previous page's layout, and Saxon here gets a bit too far into the role of dueling Kenzie. Kenzie tries to warn him, but Saxon needs a physical reminder, and in panel 3 we see that this only gets Saxon to ramp up the authenticity of the combat. The gathered crowd was done as color-held silhouettes to simplify the background, and the bloody spit in panel 2 and then the swipe in panel 3 were actually negative spaces that were not inked in that crowd. Page 20, Kenzie is stating something he's probably said before and something true about Saxon's character. You take things too far, Saxon. Saxon does not care for Kenzie besting him, even in a mock fight. But notice that the background crowd silhouettes now also seem to have spears. Page 21 is a 90-degree rotation of the page's last layout. Clearly I do this kind of rotation and mirroring a lot. Saxon is surrounded and captured. Lyndon and Thaddeus are the names of Lyndon Webb and Tad Stones, more friends and supporters from the old Hellboy forums. And Saxon here clearly doesn't feel like this is a fair fight. The background color over the course of this has become increasingly red as the danger becomes real. Page 22. Kenzie and Saxon are bound and dragged back through Barkstone's gates. My original draft of the outline had Liam also being removed with them, that I had not split the party. But once I think I got Liam into that attic, I was rewriting in my own head, and I knew that there was no good way for him to leave. I had to play out that undercover role for Liam. Page 23, a splash page of the exterior of Barkstone. Thank goodness for that tree outside of the architectural antique store. Saxon and Kenzie are just inked shapes with their binding as negative space, and then each mouse was colored to match their cloaks so they read a little clearer. Now, why didn't the Axe Army kill Saxon or Kenzie, or keep them prisoner? I think they assumed that leaving them for dead outside of the gates could arouse less suspicion and questions from other towns or guard mice than outright murder or kidnapping. Page 24, if you're reading the issue, is the pinup by Rick Cortez. It can be found in the back of the hardcover volume, if that's what you're flipping through. This was another artist and friend and supporter from the Hellboy forum days. Rick told me that he was inspired by a video that was going around at the time of a mouse being attacked by a giant centipede. I feel sorry for Kenzie bleeding there. Jesse Glenn, who Kenzie is based on, said, "Aw, man, no one is going to like the mouse with a stick if he just sits around and bleeds." And that's the third issue of Mouse Guard. It's been collected in Fall 1152, published by Archaea. If you've enjoyed this commentary, please leave comments in the section below. Let me know what I didn't answer for you in this issue, and subscribe for updates when I add more Mouse Guard commentary. Thank you for listening.